Hello, my name is Andy, and I will be discussing the topic questions for video post number 1. And I will lead off with the first one. What reasonable options does a university have if they believe the NCAA's rule enforcement system is fundamentally unfair, given decisions like Tarkanian v. NCAA and NCAA v. Miller? And the first option that I see is viable for universities is to simply leave the NCAA, since membership is optional. For an individual school, this isn't ideal, in my opinion, because they would miss out on a ton of revenue from TV broadcasting and they wouldn't be able to compete in postseason play. But for a conference perspective or the Power 5 in general, this actually isn't the worst idea. The Power 5 is so big and powerful in college sports that they can easily form their own autonomous league right now and have their own rules and enforcement. This was discussed on the ESPN show Get Up, where they played a quote from the Minnesota Board of Regents saying that he wouldn't be surprised to see the Power 5 leave the NCAA the next couple of years, just because they're sick of their overreaching rules and they feel like they're always infringing on the rights of the universities and the conferences. And this would be a huge move for those universities and conferences, not only with regards to getting away from the rules and restrictions, but also taking the money with them. Last season, the Power 5 brought in $170 million in TV revenue for football, while the Group of Five only brought in $11 million. So if this were to happen, the NCAA would lose out on a ton of money. And even if they don't move and make their own autonomous league, this could be used as leverage against the NCAA. And these conferences could essentially say, unless you change your rule enforcement or you back off and stop infringing on our rights, even though the courts may back you up most of the time, we're going to leave and we're going to take our money with us. And I could potentially see this affecting the NCAA and convincing them, at the highest level of decision making that, okay, we'll find a middle ground here of how to kind of figure out this rule enforcement issue. And the second option that I see for schools that think the rules are unfair and the enforcement is overreaching is to look at other legal aspects if they feel like they are overreaching their power as the NCAA. And you see this in the NCAA versus the Board of Regents of OU from 1981, where the NCAA had come in agreement with ABC and CBS for exclusive broadcasting of games. And the point of this was to limit the amount of televised college football games in order to keep up spectator attendance at games as well. And the CFA, the College Football Association, was made up of the Board of Regents of OU as well as Georgia. And they saw this as unfair, so they went and got their own TV rights with NBC. And the NCAA came in and said, hey, we're going to impose sanctions and punish you guys if you do this. And so they did it anyway, and they got sued. And so what the courts found was that the NCAA was going against the law and infringing on the CFA's rights to have their own television deal, and that it was against the Sherman Act and it was illegal horizontal price fixing. And so the courts ruled in the CFA's favor. And so with regards to the 14th Amendment, that's kind of out of reach with the NCAA, as we've seen with precedent of Tarkanian v. NCAA. But there are other legal aspects that universities can tackle in order to take on the NCAA if they think their rules are unfair. So the second question I'll address is, how can university assert more authority and change the NCAA regulations? And so the most important thing, I think, is to use representatives from the university, such as players and presidents and faculty, which already make up the NCAA. Like, each university is essentially a part of the NCAA, up to the highest level of decision making. And I think a great example of seeing this work is the fact that back in October 2019, the NCAA, with a unanimous vote from the board of directors, allowed players to profit from their name, image, and likeness. This is a huge step in this decision-making process and representation of players and faculty, because for years we've seen players, current and former, from the NCAA preach this to their universities and preach this to the NCAA. And now we finally see this come to fruition. And this is a great example of how this representation power has worked. And this is a great way to address rules that need to be changed in the NCAA. And the last question I'll address is from a risk management perspective. How should a university move forward given the difficulties of changing the rules of the NCAA? And so I think the biggest thing is just to put in policies and procedures in place at the university to assess risk within the college and find it and control it whenever possible. And much like in a risk management audit, where you would audit a facility to see where physical dangers may be, universities should audit their athletic departments to see where possible infringements on bylaws of the NCAA and rules of the university could apply. And in my opinion, I think that if UNLV had done this with Tarkanian and the basketball team and all other sport departments, and if they had seen what he was doing, addressed it and took action before the NCAA got involved, in my opinion, I think that case may have never happened. But I think it's very important to do that as a university. If you don't want the NCAA to get involved, have those policies and procedures apply cyclically all the time. They always need to be evaluating the practices within the athletic department to find these risks and to control it.